The Social Impact of Technology with Dr. Neil Rudin.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Hello again, I'm your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and you can go to www.azuredevops.show to see show notes and also past episodes. And we've got quite the past guest list and topics. We're recording a few weeks after the Microsoft Build Conference. There was a lot of exciting things going on there. And one of the things I'm excited to share is that I launched my latest book called .NET DevOps for Azure. And if you are interested in that, you can go to aka.ms/.NET DevOps book. And you can get your copy, whether ebook or print book, and get it shipped straight to you. Also, if you run a user group or a regional conference, or if you're speaking at a user group or meetup or at a conference, and you would like some books to give away to the audience, then just reach out and get in touch, and I'd be happy to send some over to support that event. Our guest today is Dr. Neil Rudin. He's the founder, entrepreneur, consultant, trainer, and author. He travels the world working with technology companies. Neil loves Australia, where he helps software development teams get more productive. He spends much of his time each year flying between the Europe and US, working with software teams and writing about his experiences. Neil brings his business and technical skills to the companies he works with to ensure that they have happy customers. Neil is often at the forefront or ahead of new technology trends. In 1995, Neil worked on 3D graphics and VRML. Then in 99, he worked with smartphone technology. In 2002, he was actively involved in the tablet PC. And in 2005, online mapping with a focus. And in 2008, digital tables. And in 2011, vision-based computing. But since 2016, Neil has been working with AI, cognitive services, and mixed reality. Neil thinks technology should help us and not hinder us, and right now, that's not always the case. As an author, Neil has been involved in several technical books, including Mixed Reality Fundamentals, where he was a co-author, The Digital Table, also co-authored, and Extreme.NET introduces extreme programming techniques to .NET developers. Neil, welcome all the way from Sydney, Australia. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. That's a pretty big introduction. feels like a lot of stuff.
Well, hey, that's all you.
Yeah.
You've packed a lot into your 5 years of experience in the industry. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, it's gone real fast. Like, it is amazing to think how long I've been doing this and how quickly time flies. I guess that's what happens when you have fun, right? But yeah, it's
that's right.
Sometimes I kind of wake up and think, wow, that was 10 years ago, that was 15 years ago, and it feels like it was only yesterday. So yeah, a lot of things happen, and yeah, I've been very lucky to be directly involved with a lot of things that have changed the way we work and the way we build software and the industry as a whole, I guess, the technology space.
Right. And one thing that happened 12 years ago, you and I were in a test-driven development panel discussion at TechEd 2007.
Wow, yes, you remember that, huh? I do remember that, yes.
Well,
yeah,
no,
and even then, I think people... Go ahead.
Well, I remember that because I was the least qualified person on the panel. It was you, it was Billy Hollis, and it was me. And I was just honored to be on the panel.
Now you're an expert. See, we taught you something.
Absolutely.
I do remember that, and I kind of remember even at the time thinking, why are we still talking about this? Why is everyone not just doing it? It's so obvious, and yet still people are struggling to get quality high. People are struggling to get unit tests into their software. Still, so much software is built on the basis of, well, I think it works, it compiles. Yeah,
Right.
it kind of amazes me that, that was 8 years ago, was it? 9 years ago? 12 years ago.
12
Yes.
years.
So
That's
12
right.
years ago, we were talking about stuff, and still we're struggling to get so many people to get their head around how to build better quality software. It kind of amazes me, really. And the volume has gone up too, right? Like, it's one of the many challenges we have in this industry. But the sheer volume of software being produced has increased massively in that 12 years.
Oh, yes.
And that makes it even worse of a problem in many ways, in that we need to be much more focused and much more disciplined in the products that we're creating, in order to really set the bar.
Definitely. The thing that has changed over the last 12 years is I don't find people actively arguing against automated testing. They're not all doing it, but actually back in 2007, there was a lot of people flat out arguing against it.
Yeah, that's true. There still are. I still encounter people occasionally that are like, oh no, that takes the creativity out of the product, which is fine. But if you're painting a picture that you're going to hang on someone's wall,
Right.
That's where creativity lies. And there's plenty of space for creativity still in software development, even when you're implementing TDD. In fact, in many ways, I feel that TDD creates the framework for richer creativity. But it does require a mind shift, and it does require a change in how you develop the product, and that's important. And for some people, I think they still struggle with that. And I agree. People don't necessarily argue about automated testing, but they will argue with you about when those tests should be written. And many people believe that automated testing means that the creation of the test should be automated too, which is a somewhat different category of testing, and not something that I would disagree with. I think it's great if you can have frameworks and systems that will automatically generate tests around the code that you've written, but you should be thinking about what you're trying to build first. And I think TDD creates a much stricter way, or more disciplined way, of driving that conversation.
Right. Well, you've seen so many technologies and so many paradigms, and you've done a lot of thinking over how the different technologies impact how we behave and how we communicate, what the social impact of technology is. What's your general take on that at the moment?
Yeah, I do a lot of thinking around this right now, and I have been for the last few years. I think, if you think about all the technology that we've introduced as an industry in the last 40 years to the world, it's been incredible. I mean, we are all carrying computers around in our pockets, and we have this incredible capability to communicate with almost anyone in the world almost instantly, as fast as our brains can operate anyway, often faster than our brains can operate, which actually causes a whole bunch of other problems because we don't think, we just talk or speak. I think a slower approach to communication sometimes is actually preferable, which is why I'll often revert back to email. If someone is messaging me, I will return to email. But I think we've created a whole bunch of challenges that we now need to address. The immediate response type engagement, this weird world of FOMO, fear of missing out, because you're not constantly monitoring streams of output from hundreds of other people, leads to a world which is very, very hard to focus on anything for any period of time. And when you're writing software, you need to focus when you're building solutions, when you're building products, and actually if you're building any kind of product, whether it's a hardware product, a software product, if you're in your shed doing, trying to build something, doing some woodworking, you need to focus. You can't be constantly distracted every 26 seconds by checking your phone and making sure you're not missing out on some important stream of information. You need to be spending your time on the product and really, getting your head into the mindset. And I think software is one of those things that this is incredibly critical in, that you typically have to keep several things in your mind at the same time as you're manipulating things, or you're refactoring something, or you're inserting some new functionality into existing code without breaking anything. There's a lot to keep kind of juggled in your head. And if you're constantly being distracted by other streams of data, there is no way you're going to achieve that to any kind of quality. And so learning to shut off all of these devices, shut off all the technology that we've built to enable us to communicate so that we can really focus is a whole new space that I think people really need to get their head into, and really need to start focusing their own energy towards being focused. And this gets even worse when you're having a meeting or trying to do pair programming or working with someone else trying to help them solve a problem. There's nothing more frustrating than the person you're sitting with being distracted constantly by streams of data on their screen or on their personal device. The device on their desk is constantly vibrating and they're glancing over at it. This is a huge challenge that I don't really see anyone spending a huge amount of energy addressing it. In fact, I see a lot of people spending a lot of energy in trying to increase it, because the way they monetize is by grabbing your eyeballs, right? So the more they can grab your attention, the more they can monetize. And these feeds of data are really, they would like you to spend your entire life just staring at their screen, where they can feed ads into your eyeballs. And we need to, as humans, we need to work out how to extract ourselves from that, so that we can actually focus on building more valuable products going forward.
That's a good point. It's easy to point at the school kids today walking around just staring at the phone, or they have the earbuds in and they're walking face down into the phone, or they're sitting with their friends, but nobody's talking. They're just all tapping with their thumbs. But at the same time, I saw an article where someone was lamenting and blaming Slack for the dysfunctional communication at various organizations. I think fits right into there, with people trying to communicate, but at the same time expecting an immediate response whenever they reach out to someone on Slack or Teams or other chat mechanisms.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we do it in business as well as, the kids do it on the streets. And it's not just the kids, by the way. I see retirees sitting with each other at a cafe and they're both on their phone. I'm like, all right, okay, this is what you guys worked so hard for all your life, is so you can stare at a screen, sitting with each other. So, I mean, I think it's unfair to say it's just the kids. It's a set of technology that is very addictive. It creates, these minuscule dopamine hits that are, they're like taking a drug, and people get addicted to their device. And in fact, if you take the device away from people for periods of time, they get withdrawal symptoms. They get very angsty and fidgety, and they want to see, they don't. And I think you're right. We do it in business too. We are moving away from a world where, I guess many, many years ago, we would actually write physical letters, and they became emails. And it's very easy to treat an email as kind of a batch job, right? So you can kind of let your email build up to the end of the day. You don't worry about it because people don't expect an immediate response. And then towards the end of the day, you can batch job all your emails, and you can go through and respond. And that's a very functional way, I think, of working. And many people who I have a lot of respect for will only answer email once or twice a day, and they'll do it as a batch. And they get that. Then, once you get to know that person operates that way, that's fine, right? You go, okay, cool. I'll send him an email and I'll expect a response later. But the Slack, Teams, LinkedIn Messenger, I mean, it's just numerous amount, Skype, I guess people are still using Skype for business, just numerous constant distractions on your desktop screen or laptop screen. And combine that with people have Twitter feeds on their screens, they'll have Facebook on their screens. So they've got both social,
and push notifications,
personal notifications. That's right. It's just a non-stop, barrage of distractions. And so somehow learning to switch all that off is super, super important. And there's ways that you can do it, and in many ways, I guess one of the things we've found, in some of the teams I've been working with, is starting to set periods of time that are non-distracting periods, where you just say no. During these hours, everything's off. Like, if you want to come into this meeting room, you can't bring any of your personal devices, not even your laptop. We're going to use the devices in the room. We're going to use the screens. We have shared screens. Products like Surface Hub is a great example of this, where you can still access content. You can still access your files. With N Squared, the company I've been working with, we have a Digitable product, which is a table screen embedded, massive multi-touch screen embedded in the table. You can bring up your OneDrive, your Dropbox files. You can create new files. You can do it directly there, but you don't log in. It's not your stuff. It's not your distractions appearing. And then you ban phones, tablets, and laptops from those spaces. And that creates a very different level of engagement. And then I think the same with pair programming. Like, if you're pair programming with someone, it's actually quite rude if you've got notifications popping up on your screen while you're pair programming with them. And that's, why would they spend their energy supporting you in doing what you want to get achieved if you're not going to pay attention to, them being there? Yeah, it's a bit, to me, it's a bit like, if you ask someone for help, come to my desk and help me do something. It's a bit like when you ask someone to come over for dinner and you just kind of put the food down in front of them and then you go and watch TV.
That's true. That's true.
Well, really? Right. You would never do that. That would be such a rude thing to do. But people seem to think that it's okay to be, responding to a Slack message on one screen while you're pair programming with someone else on another screen. Well, that's just not going to work out well.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
And with video conferencing, you can, in multiple screens, I think most people probably who have used video conferencing have noticed or suspected the other person actually focusing on some other task and just pretending to be in the meeting.
How did you know? I'm in the middle of doing something else right now. No, I'm not. I wouldn't do such a thing. But yeah, I mean, I think this is...
Are you baking a cheesecake while we're chatting here?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I'm doing. Yes, I'm also building a table and digging a hole. And I mean, this is the whole challenge of not being in the same space, I think, as well. Like, I think there's, everyone's so crazy for teleworking and, I can work from home. And yeah, there's definitely benefits from it. Like today I'm at home, I'm working on a bunch of stuff. And actually most of my day is on phone calls, such as this, doing this podcast review, but I'm doing a bunch of that kind of stuff, and that's actually a good use. But when I'm engaged with a development team, I want to be there with them. I want to physically be in the same space, because there's a lot more you get out of being in the same space as someone than you can ever get from being, even on a good high quality video call with people. There's a human side to what we do, and I think that's not to be underestimated. Building connections with people. We've got clients who we either fly to or fly to visit us on a regular basis, and there's a reason for that, right? It's not just because they want to earn air miles. It's because they want to spend time with you as a human being, understanding you, and you helping them move something forward. That human connection is really, really important and not to be underestimated. And I think in the tech world, we commonly try and turn ourselves almost into, automatons where, well, it is our function to, we're not Data from Star Trek, we're not robots. We all have emotions and we all need to engage with each other. And I think we need to be truthful to ourselves and to our human nature around that. And if we're building something as a team together, then we should be in the same space. The benefit you get from that, I've found, is huge. And I'm sure people will continue to disagree in the same way they continue to disagree about TDD. And we can, continue to disagree about that. And I'm happy about that because I'm right. So,
there's some trades that don't have this challenge because in order to do the trade, it makes those distractions impossible. If you're a welder or a plumber or a trade where you have to have both hands and your eyes on your materials in order to do something, then it's almost impossible to at the same time be paying attention to a digital device when you have the welding mask on, or maybe you're excavating something and whereas knowledge workers who do their normal tasks with a screen anyway, I think it's an additional challenge to recognize.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very interesting, I guess, problem that we have in that we are, by the nature of our work, hooked into stuff. And we have, we don't have to be online, but we feel we have to be online most of the time. And it is getting harder and harder not to be online, with so many of the tools we're using being kind of this hybrid or fully cloud hosted or
right.
Backed by cloud technology. And even when I, see Visual Studio developers, and they're busy building something and they should know exactly what they're doing. They're not doing anything super complicated that requires like help files. And yet the internet goes down and it's like the end of the world. Everything stops and ceases. It's like, wow, okay. What are you actually doing right now? Oh, I'm building a function that manipulates the local file system. Oh, and you've done that like 7,000 times and you know exactly what you're doing. Yeah. So why are you screaming blue murder because the internet's not available right now? Oh, well, and you kind of think, well, they're probably thinking to themselves, yeah, why am I? Apart from the fact that probably the music that's in their ears has stopped playing because they're streaming that.
That's right.
And that's actually a whole other aspect of the being in the same space. A lot of the time we have, I guess over the years, we've moved a lot of developers into shared spaces, right? And those shared spaces are really designed so that we can more easily share information with each other. And then I see a bunch of people sitting in those shared spaces trying to close off the world around them by putting headphones on and focusing on their screens, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a shared space. And I think people are different. I think, some people do require a little bit of, or some people require a lot of bit of time on their own to really focus on stuff, and they want to be locked in a cupboard almost in a little office, and they would prefer that to really get into something. And some people prefer to be in a space where there's a lot of buzz going on around them, and they don't have a problem with focusing on what they need to focus on while still having a kind of background thread processing the buzz that's happening around them in case there's anything interesting. And I think you're a bit like that, right? Like you like to work in kind of buzzy spaces. I've seen you working like on your laptop in cafes, and
Yep.
you're totally focused on what you're doing. and there's a ton of stuff going on around you, right?
I can do that when there's a lot of noise. But interestingly enough, that Slack article mentioned that on average, I don't know what kind of study they did, but they said around 23 or 28 minutes is the time frame that it takes somebody to regain a deep level of concentration after being interrupted or after turning their attention to something else. And I recognized that with the last 5 or 6 months that I was writing this new book. I had to block off and have no meetings or nothing scheduled on every Friday. What I did is every Friday, I said, okay, I'm going to have nothing and I'm going to be able to concentrate. And if somebody called or I had to do something that broke up the concentration, it took me a while to get back in the focus mood. And while I was doing it, sometimes I'm here out in the country and I have an office in my barn, and it literally is a barn, and sometimes the cows walk outside. But I will turn on just as loud as I can some loud music, like with a lot of instruments going on, and it'll almost be a way to numb my ears, and it is kind of like being in a cafe or being in a loud space with a lot of stuff going on, so that I'm focusing on just what's in front of me, and somehow that helps.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we do all operate differently on those levels. But at the same time, the whole purpose of creating kind of team rooms, or there's lots of different names for them, but open workspaces for development teams to work in together, is to create an opportunity for cross flow of information.
Yes.
And you to be able to overhear someone talking about something that you know how to fix, or someone struggling with a problem that you actually solved 20 minutes ago, and be able to add value at that point through overhearing information and sharing information. And then, I walk around these spaces and you see a bunch of people just with their headphones on. Well, of course, they may as well not be there at that point. Or we may as well just put them in cubicles again. So, yeah, I think that's part of the challenge. I think it's about being present. I think that's really what most of this conversation is about. It's about really being present in the moment of what you're trying to achieve. And I think the sad thing is that so much of the great technology we've invented and built as an industry over the last 40 years is actually breaking this ability of ours to be present. And we need to be even more conscious of it now. And it's probably going to increase because of the demand of our attention between, all the different, both commercial and non-commercial entities that want our eyeballs, is going up. And so we need to be much more conscious of it, and we need to think about how we create environments as an industry that enable it. I mean, I don't really want to get to this point, but I kind of feel we are at the point now where, and I've seen one or two companies try to do this, and I'm not sure how successful it is, but it's almost check your phone at the door.
Mm-hmm.
You leave your phone and your gun at the door. You don't bring either into the office, right? Like it's because they are just a constant distraction. And I guess in some industries, right, like if you're in a very top security type space, I'm thinking government at this point, right, like a DoD type space.
Oh yeah,
you're not allowed to bring your own device in. That has to be put in a locker at the door. And for good reason, right? But will this become something that other organizations start to adopt just because it enables people to really focus? It's like, are we really that immature that we need a police force to do that for us, or are we as an industry? Are we able to do that ourselves and create our own, spaces of focus? And I think we need to. In fact, if we don't, as an industry, create a culture where we can do this and self-manage, we are going to get the choice taken away from us. many companies will just say no.
So what guidance would you give the listeners for creating a development environment that enables focus?
Yeah, look, I've tried a few different things, some more successful than others, and depending on the people as well. I think having spaces where people can escape to, like grab a laptop and go and sit in a cubicle, if you really want to focus on something, is a good idea. I think one of the things I've tried quite successfully with one group actually is there's a couple of companies doing this now, but they're like little USB lights that you stick on the side of your screen, and they can be red, green, yellow, orange, purple, whatever color you want. And you can say, look, if it's red, don't disturb me.
Yeah.
And then you block it out. And they usually sync with your calendar or with other software that you have. And so you can actually block out 2 or 3 hours each day that are your focus hours. And your light will go red and people won't disturb you. That's a good way of doing it. But then
what's the name of those devices?
There was one. What was Luxafor or something was one of the ones that we worked with. Let me see if I can find the
Lux lights.
Link. There you go. Now you see what you've done is yeah, maybe that's it. You've distracted me to go to a web page and take my focus away from the conversation. See how easy it is. I'll find the link and send it to you after we've recorded this. But
all right, we'll include that in the show notes because that might be an interesting device for the listeners to check out.
Yeah, so that's one. Actually, just having the conversation with the development team, like sitting down with the team and saying, look, how are we going to get more focused? We know quality improves when there's focus. Like, I don't think anyone's going to argue that the quality of your work will improve when you are 100% focused on what you're working on. So how do we improve the focus and let people come up with ideas? And often those ideas will be like, let's block calendar time where we switch our phones to flight mode, or let's, block calendar time where we'll actually be pair programming. And actually pair programming is almost a forcing function to create a bit more focus because, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of rude to be sitting with someone and doing something else.
Right.
And so it creates a peer pressure for people to, okay, you and I are going to sit down and work on solving this or building this new piece of functionality this afternoon. We'll sit down, we'll do it. When we've made that commitment and we're going to spend 2 or 3 hours working on something together, we're probably not going to take distractions from elsewhere. We're probably going to switch off our Twitter feed, maybe even leave our phone on our desks and sit somewhere else and just really focus on it. And I think that's a powerful tool to kind of act as a way of driving that. I think just helping people be conscious of it as well. And we've had a couple of instances where actually asking people to log. You don't think it's a problem? Start logging your distractions.
Yeah.
So every time you take your attention away, write a little note down somewhere. Build a spreadsheet or whatever tool of choice, but start logging it. And people are often very surprised by how often they are being distracted and how often they are taking their attention away from what they're hoping to achieve. And I think that there's a certain amount of phone distraction that is actually a bit unconscious, right? Like you just kind of glance at your phone. Oh, there's something there. Now I'm into that and I forgot what I was working on. And then you got that context switch and you said 25, 26 minutes. I think it varies depending on people, and it probably varies depending on study, but it's certainly it's a good few minutes of coming back to it and getting your head back into where you were at. And every time you do that, and if you're doing it at, every 10 minutes, well, you could be in a point where you never really can truly focus and get in the zone
right.
of, delivering quality product. So other things we've tried, banning devices from meeting rooms. We do. I'm a big supporter of that. I'm like, no, don't bring any of your personal devices into a meeting room. Anything you need, send to the devices in the meeting room, or just like everything you have nowadays, digital content is pretty much in the cloud anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So or on a server in the space you're in. And so you should be able to access it on a shared device. So creating spaces where there are shared devices that people don't log into, but they can log into their OneDrive, they can log into their Dropbox, whatever, and they can access Git, they can access their, file systems, but they don't have their software installed, they don't have their Twitter feed installed, they don't have their Facebook, auto logged in, they don't have their Slack auto logged in.
I like the iPhone screen time feature, and it kind of records and says, oh, this is how many times you picked up your phone today, and this is how much time you used it today, and it's either up or down certain percent from yesterday, things like that, because it's kind of like an auto logger. Today I was out and about in a conference, and it says that I picked up my phone 3 times per hour on average.
Wow. That's probably actually very low.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. I've thought a lot about this, and I have all of those push notifications when an app asks. I don't even read what it's asking for. It's automatically no. If I need functionality later, maybe I'll judiciously turn half of it on. Right. But I found, because you and we're early adopters of technology, so I think we were some of the first ones to feel the pain of just the massive distraction. Every app wants to get you back, wants to get your nose back in its screen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how they monetize. So they absolutely, and in fact, that's how often, even if the app itself isn't monetizing, that's how the app creator justifies their existence to the corporation they built the app for. Oh, look how many hours of usage we've had on our app, right? That's how they're justifying
People
that.
Want to use this app.
Yeah. Pay us more so we can upgrade it and do more work on it. That's right.
So this is a really important topic for developers, but for any knowledge worker. Before we go, is there anything else or any resources that our listeners should follow up on?
Oh, look, there's a ton of stuff starting to emerge. And I mean, like you mentioned, the screen time, I think lots of people are becoming more aware of the problem. Like I noticed Office 365 now has a feature that you can switch on where it can email your staff a weekly report of, things they would like. How much time did you spend doing email? How much time did you spend in meetings? I think there's even an overlap. How much time did you spend doing email in meetings? Those kind of conversations, those kind of data points lead to more interesting conversations, right? Like they lead us into talking about this, and having these conversations is the first step to solving the problem. And I kind of think, we need to kind of spread the awareness, make people aware that there's this challenge that we need to solve. We've created it as part of the industry we're in. We've made the challenge. We've built the challenge. Now we need to address it in a way that's reasonable, that's not too draconian, I guess is a way of putting it. But I think if we don't, then we are going to end up in a space where more draconian type actions are taken upon us in order to enable us to be focused. So yeah, I think think about it and go away, and there is a ton of stuff out there. I'll have a little bit of a think about links that I can send you, but there's a few things that I can send you where people are spending energy in this space.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much, Dr. Neal, for visiting with me. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on your show. It's fun to have these conversations, and it's been a while since we've really sat down and had a bit of a chat around some of these things as well. So it's good.
Right. And until next week, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.